said to me, he would always, he could always reach me if he was humorous. So he said to me like this, some people, I would be very glad if they mumbled and I didn't hear what they had to say. He said, the problem with you is that much of what you say is interesting, so it's annoying when I can't hear you. So, and the other time with this, it was the same issue. I got these really crazy ideas in my head sometime about what right behavior was. And I decided that I was too impulsive because my mind worked so fast. So something would be said and I would answer before I had fully considered. And then I would find myself in the middle of saying something that I'd rather not say. So I thought that a way to solve that would be when I found myself in such a position, literally, I would put my hand over my mouth and say, oh, never mind, like that. I thought this would be socially helpful. And so I had sort of started doing that for a few days, and I was so pleased with myself. And then, let's see, we were just, my friend and I, several of us had been with Swami for the evening, and we were just leaving, standing in the doorway, just, getting ready to go. He would often do important things in a casual way, so it wouldn't, because I was very sensitive. And he said, this afternoon I had some time and I was meditating, and while I was meditating, Babaji came into my meditation, and Asha, he had a message for you. And I'm just like, and then he says, and what he said was, oh, never mind. I said, it's that annoying, is it, sir? He said, yes, would you please stop? Of course, I never did it again, but he could get to me that way. He always worked with that. He was a very skillful leader, and he understood that everybody's individual. I'll tell one more since I'm on this. In this would have been 1980, 1981, Ananda Village, which was the first Ananda community that we started. 1968 is when it started, and the county that we were in at that time was a real backwater in California, just kind of a rural place, nothing much going on there, and so it was kind of ingrown, but there wasn't much oversight. And when we started, they called us a church camp, and we were the only jurisdiction overseeing the whole building there. Everything that happened was a man named Hal, I can't remember his last name right now, and he had worked a great deal in developing countries, so he had a real clear idea of the difference between what was safe and healthy and what bureaucrats might think was needed. So for like 12 years, he was the only one who had any supervision over us, and he would just come and he could see that we were intelligent, we were doing it, but we had no building codes, we had no health and safety codes. He just would come out and sign us off every time. So it was great. So we just built up to this point. And then we just had way past what we were designated as, and we began to come to the attention of the county, and we got in trouble with the planning department. The head of the planning department was a secretary who had no training, no education in it, but had just risen through the ranks because that's how they ran things. And she had already been investigated by a grand jury, and they had recommended that she was incompetent and should be fired. But the Board of Supervisors hadn't done that. So we went in, Swami and me and I think Jyotish, and we're sitting there in front of this woman, her name was Sharon. And Swamiji explains to her with great energy, this wonderful vision we have and what we're doing. She turns around, this cooperative community, a new way of life, all these things. She turns around, pulls a big book out, flips through it and says, so you're a condominium. That's what she says. I mean, like that. Swamiji was astute enough, he could see something that none of the rest of us could see, which was he knew the psychology of this bureaucrat, and he knew we would never get past her. And she handed it off to this man, named Jim, who, as it happened, he was a very large man. And the way we felt is whatever papers we turned in, he just put them on his seat and sat on them, and that was it. And Swami knew that we were doomed. And so he started a political action group to get this woman fired. And it was hugely controversial within our community because we'd never participated in politics ever. And nobody could quite get what Swami could see. They thought if we just kept cooperating, he knew this woman would never let us develop. So it was 1976, and that was the 200-year anniversary of America's founding, the USA's founding. So he called this, we set up this group, we called it the Bicentennial Liberty Committee, the BLC. And Swamiji wrote this manifesto about freedom and about the interference of the local bureaucracy, and it was all great. Nobody in the community would cooperate with him because it was just too nuts. So he writes this in his leadership training course. He writes this material success course. He writes about how no one would go with him, but there was one person in the community, he doesn't name it, but it was me, who had a good sense of humor. And I pitched it to her as a madcap adventure, he said. And once I got her on board, she had the enthusiasm to get a few other people on board, and we did the whole thing together. Why am I telling you this story? I think it was just about the humor of the whole thing. And we ran this whole thing all the way through and got the woman fired. Yeah. We used our English names, which nobody knew at that time. And we pretended to be somebody else, and we had all of the Ananda people come in and make it seem like there were hundreds of people. Oh, and he had me write letters. I became the secretary. My name, believe it or not, at that time was Nan Savage, which is a great name for a political activist, don't you think? I was Nan Savage, secretary of the Bicentennial Liberty Committee. I mean, the county's this big. Swami called it afterwards a tempest in a teapot. So, but he had this whole campaign, and he would have me write letters to the local newspaper, one newspaper, explaining, this day we would complain about the building department, the next day we'd complain about the planning department like this, and just sort of creating this siege, like we were at siege. And he would say, okay, we have to write about the building inspector. He said, my question would be, how nasty a letter do you want, sir? Medium nasty, full nasty, And I would pen all these things out like this. And in the end, we had editorials, this mysterious Bicentennial Liberty Committee that just appeared full grown in the county and seemed to have its tentacles in all directions. And it was totally fun. And at one point he was going to enlist the aid of this man who ran a little coffee shop in town. Bill Steele was his name. You're probably not old enough in Ananda to remember. And you weren't even born, so you wouldn't have anything to do with it. But he was going to call this man. I said, Swami, Bill Steele is a well-known crackpot. You really want him on our side? He sort of looked at me and he said, they're all well-known crackpots. And he just dialed the number. But we just pulled him in from all sides. And then he did this whole thing too, where first we created this big thing, and then somehow he came in as Swami Kriyananda, as the leader, and was the voice of calm reason. I mean, we created the crisis, and then he comes in to talk about harmony and all of us getting along. And I said afterwards, did you have any idea how this was going to work? Hey, Swami's been a king. He was King Henry, he was Alfonso X. He's run countries. That was when I said, this was amazing. Oh, he said a tempest in a teapot, like that. And it wasn't really manipulative. It was that we needed to get this woman out, because as long as she was there, we were never going to be able to develop. So in the end, they waited. Oh, let's see, what was parts of this? Oh, yes, and then I would go to the county with these petitions. I started going to the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I'm actually, believe it or not, very good at also, I can explain to people what's really going on in a way that, this is what these people are saying, this is what. So I would go to the meetings and I would interpret everybody and help the supervisors to know what was going on. So they really liked me because I was. And so then what happened was the people wanted me to run for county supervisor. Yeah. I came to Swami, was like, because I would die of boredom if I had to do that. Sir, do I have to run? And I probably could have won. Do I have to be a county supervisor?
It's your calling.
Yeah. He said, no, he said, and it was very profound actually. He said, no, we're not interested in power. We're not trying to get power here. We just need to have the freedom to develop. And this woman needed, and so they let everything calm down, and then like a couple of months later just quietly went out and removed her. And then brought in a competent professional who just came to us and said, okay, so what do you need to do? Okay, it looks like this. Still took us years, but he knew what to do. She was just incompetent, and in the way of people, she just stopped it like that. But I didn't have to run for county supervisor. And I'll finish, and then we'll actually start. One of the things that happens when you dedicate yourself to the spiritual path is that God helps you finish your karma. So I had leftover karma from previous lifetimes, certainly, to be a politician. It's just part of my nature. I got to do a second project later on where I got to go around, and I got to wear, a little suit jacket and shoes that clicked when I walked. And I got to speak to the board of supervisors and all that sort of thing. And then later I got to play lawyer. I have no training in any of this, but I have some scars, which means it's part of who I am. But I just got to act it out just enough to sort of like finish, I hope, or at least, or if it was useful that I had that talent and it was useful, so it was pulled out of me to bring into things. We don't ever have to think that if we dedicate our lives to higher ideals, that in the end we will lose out. It's just the opposite. I haven't had to spend whole incarnations on these things. I just got to do what I needed to do. So, sorry for all of that. I didn't really realize that the BLC takes so long to explain. Okay. Now, let's start with a little music, which is what I really intended to do. Swami Kriyananda, in addition to being a funny, humorous person and a good leader, is a great musician, wrote some wonderful songs. So my friend Dambar will sing some of them.
We're going to do a bunch of songs tomorrow night for a concert that we'll have here from 7 to 8:30, but I figured tonight it would be fun, since it's a question and answer session, to do 2 songs that are questions. So this one's called What is Love? What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is joy? Is it just a dream? Or does joy laugh in every stream? Are the clouds mindless after all? Or is joy all nature's theme? God is dead, so men say. Can't they see all life's his play? Not a church binds him as its own. Not a creed makes him fully known. Foolish we, if we limit him. Every atom is his throne. What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is love? What is love? Is it love we touch in the flowers? And one more that I'll get some music for. And this is called What Is It For?
This is a whole concert theme. Swami songs that titles end in question marks.
We'll do one more tomorrow
There's
night.
also lie.
That's tomorrow night.
Yeah, okay.
What is it for? Walking alone, alone. What is it for? Walking alone. Must our paths ever be like the winds on the sea? Oh, walking alone. What is it for? Singing alone, alone. What is it for? Singing alone. Must our songs ever be like the winds on the sea? Oh, singing alone. What is it for? Laughing alone, alone. What is it for? Laughing alone. Must our joys ever be like the winds on the sea? Oh, laughing alone. What is it for? Living alone, alone. What is it for? Living alone. Must our lives ever be like the winds on the sea? Oh, living alone. Oh, living alone.
That was partners have demands on your life.
I'm sorry, say it.
You talk about partners demanding on your life, which you're
Right.
avoiding. But also children do, don't they?
Well,
You
and
were
it,
saying that the other night.
but the point is, yes, okay. Partners demand, children demand, parents demand, bosses demand, siblings demand, puppies demand, everything demands. It's always a challenge to stand in your own reality and have the courage for it.
But you felt there was a responsibility as a parent that was enduring, didn't you?
You have a responsibility when the children are dependent on you, but you do not owe your children your life any more than your children owe you their lives. You know, we're here to help each other. But there is a stage of spiritual development which is progressive, where I have enough creative energy and enough willpower to impose my will to a certain extent upon the world, and my security and my happiness comes from the world cooperating with my will. And then there's a higher stage that we come to where we recognize the folly of trying to make the world cooperate with my will, because you can do it a little bit, but you can't. War, revolution, climate change, and people's free will, that they just don't cooperate with you. You conceive a child, but you don't own that child. You don't even know who you're getting. You can get enemies. Sometimes Master said enemies incarnate in the same family to, quote, fight it out in close quarters. And you also have different karma with different members of your family. Swami Kriyananda, I can say this openly because all the immediate characters in his life don't exist anymore. He was very close with his mother, extremely close. And as he put it, if you think of it, it rings. There's a word for this where we're talking about where the circles overlap. He overlapped like this with his mother, very, very closely, and the rest of the family came with her. That's how he put it. And they weren't enemies by any means, but he came into the family because of her, and then she brought all the rest of them in, so they were all related to him. So just because you have biological relationships doesn't mean in any way that you have the same karma with everybody in the family. Because you'll just get drawn in because of one relationship, one part of it. So we can be very sentimental about these things, but it's also helpful. Swami even used the phrase once, and this is about children wondering about their parents, sometimes you just get a body where you can. Even sometimes, yeah, how about that? And this is in our community when the Ananda village where we've raised now 3 generations. And there was this one man who had no children of his own, but he was great with the teenagers. He was everybody's uncle, and he was really good with it. Now, in a community where everybody's a yogi and has reincarnation and karma as part of the stick picture, when the teenagers, start rebelling against their parents, which they do, the parents have something they can toss at the kids that not everybody has. Well, it's not my fault. You chose me. Right? I just conceived a child, but you decided to be born to me. And the children will say, either to the parent directly or they go to their uncle friend, I never would have chosen him, like that. I don't want them for my parents. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. And so then his name was Brian. Brian went to Swami Kriyananda and said, what do I say? What do I tell them? And then that was when Swami said, well, you don't necessarily choose every aspect of where you incarnate. You can be drawn in for one reason, for one person. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's not even a parent. Maybe it's your grandfather. I was very touched. A family in India, they had a son who unfortunately had a fatal disease, and he died when he was about 18. And the father, who was a lovely man, said to me that the son's real connection in the family was really not with him or his wife, but with his grandfather. He said all through the child's upbringing, it was always the grandfather that really the child clung to. And a month after the boy died, the grandfather died. And because this man was such an elegant, beautiful soul, he could just tell me that story. He wasn't taking it personally. But it all plays out like that. But when your children think you ought to behave just because they want you to, people are just trying to make the world match their idea because it makes them feel safe. And it's simply not something you need to go along with. I mean, all things being equal, if you can, let's be gracious, let's be harmonious. But if it really crosses your values, you just be very nice about it. But, well, I understand why you want me to do that, but I don't think so. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
I heard a lot, many times that you come back for either longing or regret. But aren't there some situations that don't have anything to do with longing and regret that you have to come back for? Like, I just recently had a karmic situation with someone that felt like it was neither longing or regret, but it felt like that was something that needed. So are there like other reasons also?
Oh, what? Okay, the question is there any reason other than longing and regret why you incarnate? Like bad luck? Or sheer stupidity? I probably know what you're talking about. We're talking about very recent events.
Yes.
Just, okay. But there's longing in there because what happened was you wanted something that person was not willing to give you. And so the whole controversy was based on longing. I had a desire, I had an attachment that was thwarted. And because my attachment was thwarted, I got super upset. And I got super upset at the person who thwarted me.
So it's not necessarily the person, it's the actual
It's,
feeling
okay.
of the...
How you can tell what the karmic lesson is you ask, what does it trigger in me? What does it bring out of me? because different situations bring different things out of people. Sometimes when your will is thwarted, you become very angry. Sometimes you become vengeful. Sometimes you collapse in despair and depression. You know, it just people have different responses. Exactly the same situation triggers or activates different karmic lessons for you. So the question is not what did so and so do to me? The question is how am I responding, and how does that expose to me something that I needed to learn? So people don't really cause that. They participate in your karmic learning, but they don't cause it. They participate in it because they act in such a way that we become aware of something we didn't know. And so we make a grave mistake when we try to attack you and make you different. We have to understand, oh, wow, look at that. I didn't know that I felt this way. And then, of course, sometimes it's not that you never interact with external circumstances, but you make the decision about what's appropriate based on what I'm supposed to learn here. Sometimes it's harmony and acceptance, and sometimes it's to become a fierce fighter. You know, sometimes it's to endure, and sometimes it's just to wash your hands of it and walk away. There's no dogmas that'll apply, because everybody's untying a different knot. That's what makes it fun. Fun is an odd word, perhaps, sometimes. Yes.
Can I just ask, can we sometimes be drawn into other people's karma?
Oh, of course. Well, can we sometimes be drawn into other people's karma? Well, if you're drawn into it, it's yours. Yeah, I mean, anything that you participate in is because there was a magnetic. We operate from the energy pattern in our chakras, and the karma is carried from body to body by the energy body. The energy body of the chakras creates a magnetic force, is what draws this life to us, which draws everything to us, which is why when you meditate by a method like Kriya Yoga, which smooths out and harmonizes the energy pattern in the chakras, you change your karma. I mean, it's a very efficient way to change your karma, because your karma is just that energy pattern. So if something is around you and you get sucked into it, it's because you had a resonant energy. You would never get sucked into it if you didn't have a resonant energy with it. So it's yours. And your karma may be, why do I always get sucked into other people's drama? So it may not be specifically about that person. So you have to ask the question, what is it showing me about myself?
Okay.
Why do I think I'm responsible for the whole world?
But sometimes you step away and it's still going on over there.
Oh, that means, yes, because
Yeah.
your karma in the situation may be, this is not my karma.
Okay.
I can walk away from it. I'm not responsible for the whole world. And I've had to learn that one myself, because I would get drawn in and then I would just, what am I doing here? Swami used the word once, why are you meddling in this? And I thought, oh yeah. And there was one situation with it involved people I was very close to, big mess, and I was sort of getting into the middle of it. And then just one day I realized, wait a minute, this doesn't have anything to do with me. And I went to Swami and I said, I'm not part of this. He said, good girl.
I like it.
Because that was what it was about for me, was not to solve it,
Yeah.
but to realize, why am I getting involved in this? It's their problem, it's not mine. That's why there's no dogma. Yeah. Anything else in the room? Yes, sir.
Paramhansa Yogananda brought to this world the meditation technique of Kriya Yoga, and he says that Kriya Yoga is the airplane route to God.
Right.
I'd like to know from you what makes Kriya so effective that Paramhansa Yogananda could say that it's the airplane route to God.
Okay, why did Yogananda call Kriya the airplane route to God? So to define our terms, because it helps, the word Kriya simply means action, and many different lineages have something they call Kriya. Yogananda could have called the way he taught us to meditate anything in the world. He could have made up some esoteric something or another to make it unique. Interestingly, he did exactly the opposite. He gave it a generic name. And so many, as I was saying, you'll find many places Kriya Yoga. So what we say, if we're really trying to make it clear, is you say the Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahashaya, or the Kriya Yoga. Even if Babaji doesn't quite work, because there's other, but Babaji taught Lahiri Mahashaya. Lahiri brought it out into the modern world, essentially. So he taught in a very specific way, a very simple way of meditating. Nobody can invent a way of meditating because it's spiritual anatomy. It's the way that we're made. So if people tell you that they found, if you concentrate on your left foot and then bang your head with your right hand, you'll have enlightenment. This is not the way we're made. So Kriya simply cooperates with the metaphysical anatomy, with the inner anatomy of the way that we're made. The inner anatomy has to do with the energy flow in the spine. It has to do with the chakras, and it has to do with the power of the spiritual eye, the way ego identification limits us. And these are just anatomical facts, but they're not physical facts, they're energetic facts. So Yogananda himself says that the Kriya Yoga that Babaji taught to Lahiri Mahashaya, that he taught to his disciples, he said, and he named several great masters in history, including Jesus Christ, and said that all of these masters taught this technique or something very much like it. Because it works with, and this is what I was saying a minute ago, these are the things that you really need to understand. And if you're interested, I've given hundreds of classes on these subjects. I have a YouTube channel. You can go into the question box and type in karma, reincarnation, and the chakras, and you'll find it just more than you'll ever want to know. Some of the best classes, actually, if you're not familiar with this, was in 2014 when I was in New Zealand, because I was talking to totally new audiences and I just explained everything from the ground up. So somewhere in all of that, there's something called the New Zealand tour. Okay, having said that. 2014. So karma, which is the unlearned lessons that compel us into life experiences. The chakras, which is the subtle energy system through which karma is carried from lifetime to lifetime, and is the magnetic energy pattern that determines our destiny. And reincarnation, which is essential because you just can't finish it from one birth to one death. When you get those ideas really clear, then it all begins to work. So karma is an energy pattern that we ourselves have created because we identify with our life experiences, and because energy can't be destroyed. It just shifts its form. Whenever you say, do, react, think, feel anything, we are always reflecting, and we are always answering the question by our response. What do I think is real? What do I think will make me happy? What do I think will ease suffering? And many of our responses are really misguided. But nonetheless, that's what I think is true. I think you can hurt me. I think that you'll make me happy. I think you should behave this way. I'm disappointed. Everything. I'm about to be hurt. Whatever it might be. And so it registers as a vibration of energy within us. And it goes from lifetime to lifetime. Maybe, people will say things like, I have abandonment issues. And sometimes we try to make it fit into the things that happened in our lives, and sometimes we have to really bend it to make it work. But you do have abandonment issues because in many lifetimes perhaps you were abandoned. And so a seed of energy gets planted in the chakra that corresponds to that vibration of consciousness, and then you do many other things based on that. Somebody who's really nice to you, who really loves you, but then they constantly keep doing things that make you feel abandoned, and you panic and you build more and more energy, or you manage to attract 3 or 4 more people who will abandon you, so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And these are all what we're carrying. And they can be based on real experience. And so that's karma. It's called a vritti. There's a point in the center that holds it, and then we keep adding energy, and that energy keeps spinning like this. This is karma, because this is something we don't understand. Because we are always safe, we are always loved by God. Everything that happens is to awaken us. There's another answer, like this. But this is an unlearned lesson, because I think I'm going to be abandoned and I'm going to suffer, like this. So what we get to do is, that's a magnetic force, and it keeps drawing to us the opportunity to face that question. And we end up facing it in one of two ways. Either people just keep loving us and we gradually realize that not everyone's going to abandon me, or we get 8 more experiences and 25 more lifetimes of constantly being abandoned, until the pain of sticking with that point of view is worse than the effort required to overcome it. And you see, it's a balance point. We just continue as we are until it's become so terrible that we have to change. And this is why, weirdly, bad attitudes often are made worse. And so instead of it getting better, it just gets worse and worse until I just can't stand it anymore. And now I'm really going to try to break out of it. Wait just a moment. And so we have 2 ways of dissolving those vrittis, of transcending them and seeing them from a higher perspective. One is that we have life experience that teaches us. And the other is we transcend it because through meditation, we suddenly see everything from a different perspective. And so the energy going to a new perspective is stronger than the commitment to that point of view. It's a river and a whirlpool, and the whirlpool just gets sucked into the river. And then you don't have to live through it. You don't have to risk getting up 100 more vrittis because of the experience. You just dissolve it. And this is how it works. Think of your hand. What if your hand is painted black? And this is terrible trauma that I had in my childhood. This is some tremendously fear that I have. This is a deep desire to be loved, and it never happens for me. If we live like this, if you put that hand over your eyes, what is your world? Your world is this problem, isn't it? Like this. And people say, oh, it's not so important. Oh, just put it behind you. And you're like, it's impossible. This is my whole world. Or they'll say, oh, it's not that bad. They'll just do all kinds of things that don't help at all. But if we expand our consciousness, if we get a higher perspective, if we think in terms of reincarnation, if we think in terms of how karma really works, if we begin to have an experience of the masters, everything, what happens is this does not change. This is as black as it's ever been. But we begin to see a bigger world. So it's still right there. It still happened to me. My heart was broken. They treated me like this. I was brutally assaulted when I was a child. Really hard things happen. It's still there. But look at all the other things that have now become part of my world. So we see it from a completely different perspective. And then this was part of it, but why am I holding on to it? I don't need to hold on to it anymore. You can even say, which sometimes we say, oh, I've become such a fine person because of this hard experience. I would never be the person I am if that hadn't happened. Now, it's still just as black. You haven't gone kind of all airy-fairy about it. It's still just as black, but your consciousness has expanded. And so through meditation alone, just meditation, if the meditation cooperates in the right way with the way the karma really works, the way the inner anatomy works, and that involves working with those energies, working with the chakras, opening the spiritual eye. There's lots of pieces, which is what Kriya Yoga is. Your perspective expands, and you can overcome the karma without ever having to live through it. And you just find yourself different. You don't even know why. Something comes to you that you would have just totally flipped out about before. And it's still black, but it's this big in the picture instead of this big in the picture. Does that make sense? So you can see that's an airplane route instead of just lifetime after lifetime after lifetime where I do my best to kind of work out some of it and not make it worse. And also longing and regret also leaves you, because what do I think I'm going to get? And I did the best I could, It was just what had to happen. You just see yourself very differently. This is you also, and you see yourself differently. You just feel everything begins to shift, all because you're developing this reality. Yeah, it's a very, 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 very important. Did I answer it, or do you have more?
And sort of, I was just going to say, would you say it'd be true if you were in a situation and you weren't learning from it, that same or a similar situation would continue to be put in front of you until you do?
The question is, if you're not learning the lesson, will you get the lesson again? Oh, absolutely. This is a tremendous incentive, and when it comes, it will be now. You see, you think, next lifetime. No, but next lifetime will be this lifetime.
Yeah.
And so this becomes like, why am I postponing anything? Because it will, absolutely must be learned. And again, you see, everything changes because we try to just hide and get away from it, but it will always come back. It's very helpful to just, I use the phrase, I try to stay karmically current. Or at least I always try to be working at it. Because a lot of things that I've had to go through, once was too many. One time was one too many, so I don't ever want to see it again. This is too much. I don't ever want to see this again, so what can I do? Then I can't always control myself because karma is complicated. But I can at least be pushing in the right direction instead of pushing myself into further bondage. Right?
Then you learn another lesson.
Oh, yes. Then when you get that one done, you get another one.
And then shading differently the same thing.
Let me give you, this is what I call the gospel according to Asha. This is just something I make up because it works for me. Okay, we tend to think in a linear manner. That, I'm here, here's freedom, I walk through, and people say, wow, I've learned that lesson. It always makes me super nervous when someone says that. Well, that's behind me. Because we think, we walk through it, now it's behind me, now I know it. But it's not like that. So think of it like this. Here's the spine coming up like this. And we tend to think of the karma in being vertical, horizontal layers. We cross one, we cross the blue, the green, the yellow, the red, nothing left but the purple and the pink. But the stripes are actually vertical. And they're not even. Sometimes it's a super wide stripe, then it seems to go to almost nothing, just thread-like, or maybe it even disappears for a while, or seems to disappear, goes underground. So you're looking at this pole with all these different colors, let's say, which all represent the lessons you have to learn. And we climb it via a spiral staircase. So what happens is, here you go, right? Here's pink, I get past pink, I get past red. I've learned red, I've learned pink. And then you go around the next time, and what do you know? There's the darn pink again.
So good.
And yeah, but this time it's really narrow. So whoa, I've mastered pink, and you don't know it's as wide as a house the next time. So, but they do end. But you just keep learning the same lesson on a deeper and deeper level. So you should claim your victories, but don't get too excited about them. Just like, well, that was nice. I did pretty well. I was saying to someone today just about a difficult situation I had to face. I said, I didn't flunk. I think I got about a C-, which was something.
I survived.
Yeah, I survived. I learned something. I was better than I was last time, but I certainly didn't get an A on it. So I know that stripe's going to come around again. I'll get to do it again. But I claim that I got a C- because previously I got an F. So I have learned something. But, it's easier if you are not always surprised. Well, just here we go again. Okay. I think we've used up our time. And I would like to end with a couple of happy songs. All right. Thank you all very much. Swami wrote a song. I know what you're thinking of. Swami wrote a song that was so depressing. He didn't write his songs, they were delivered to him, basically. And he wrote this song, and he said it was so depressing, he started laughing in the middle of it. It's like, how much worse can this one get? We very, very rarely sing it. And we're not going to sing it
No,
now.
we're not.
You don't want us laughing.
Pedal, but it's not. Is that a happy enough intro? Yeah, I think so. There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. And you can see that it's really okay to sing along if you want to. Leave home in the sunshine, dance through a meadow, or sit by a stream and just be. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. Men hunger for freedom, but don't see their dungeon is only the thought that they're bound. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. There's joy all around us, why wait till tomorrow? We've only this moment to live. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. Happy enough? Okay, good.
You could do one more, though. Do another.
Okay. Oh, what comes to mind?
That song you sang, the other one, the melody one,
Oh, yeah.
that was really pretty. I remember that.
Not that in the garden, that one?
Yeah, the one.
Okay. Daddy's in the garden talking to his roses. Sally's in her bedroom combing her hair. Mommy's in the kitchen laughing with the neighbor. Oh, melody sings to us everywhere. Say, listen to the robin singing from the housetop. Hear my little kitty romping on the stair. Listen to our dog Jim barking up a pear tree. Yes, melody sings to us everywhere. Oh ho, the wind is calling, hear it in the meadow, telling everybody, toss away care. Hear it, my, it's happy, swirling leaves have joined it, and melody sings to us everywhere. Now whistle with me. Thank you. wind is calling, hear it in the meadow, telling everybody, toss away care. Hear it, my, it's happy, swirling leaves have joined it, and melody sings to us everywhere. And melody sings to us everywhere. Thank you.